The deep space sensors aboard the Coalition scout ship Starfall detected the anomaly first, a blip on the edge of known space, moving slowly through the void between star systems. Dr. Kira lifted her head from her research console, her purple skin gleaming under the bridge lights as she studied the readings. "Admiral Thane, we have an unknown contact," she announced, her voice carrying the careful tone of someone who had learned not to alarm her superior unnecessarily. The tall Proximan. Admiral turned from his meditation alcove, his forearms moving in the graceful gesture that indicated attention. Thane had commanded ships for over 2 centuries, and in that time, he had seen every type of vessel the galaxy had to offer. Or so he believed. "Classification?" he asked, settling into his command throne with practiced ease. Kira's fingers danced across her sensor array, pulling up data streams that painted a picture of the distant vessel. "Unknown design, Admiral. The configuration doesn't match any species in our database. Hull composition appears to be basic steel alloys with ceramic reinforcement. Primitive fusion drive system. Length approximately 800 meters. Thane's secondary arms gestured dismissively. In the 1,000 years since the Coalition had established galactic order, they had encountered dozens of primitive species taking their first tentative steps into space. Most were quickly integrated into the Coalition's sphere of influence, their crude technologies upgraded to acceptable standards in exchange for obedience to Coalition law. "Bring us closer for visual confirmation," he ordered. "Maintain standard diplomatic distance. If they're truly primitive, we don't want to frighten them with our technology." The Starfall moved through space with the fluid grace that marked all Coalition vessels. Its biometallic hull shifted and flowed as it changed course. Internal systems automatically adjusting for maximum efficiency. Within minutes, they had closed to within 50,000 kilometers of the unknown ship. What they saw challenged every assumption about spacecraft design that the Coalition held sacred. The vessel was a brutal, angular thing that looked more like a weapon than a ship. Its hull was dark gray, almost black, with no decorative elements or aesthetic considerations. Gun turrets sprouted from its surface like mechanical thorns, and its engines glowed with the harsh blue light of barely contained fusion reactions. "Readings indicate the ship is of human origin," Kira reported, consulting the ever-expanding database of galactic species. "They achieved faster-than-light travel approximately 100 standard years ago. Current technological assessment rates them as barely spacefaring." Thane nodded with satisfaction. He remembered the reports about humans, a young species from a small yellow star, notable only for their rapid population growth and their tendency toward internal conflict. Their first contact with the Coalition had been brief and unremarkable. They had been granted limited trading rights and left to develop at their own pace, deemed too primitive to warrant serious attention. "Designate them as Contact Priority 7, Thane instructed. "Begin standard diplomatic protocols. Passive scans only until we establish communication." The passive sensors reached out toward the human vessel, designated by its hull markings as the UES Defiance. The initial readings confirmed what they expected to see: crude magnetic accelerator weapons that would be useless against modern shielding. Basic fusion reactors that produced barely enough power to maintain life support, and propulsion. Armor plating that might stop primitive projectiles but would offer no protection against energy weapons. Kira frowned at her displays, her trained eye catching subtle anomalies in the data. "Admiral, I'm detecting some unusual energy signatures. The power distribution patterns don't quite match our predictions for human technology." "Elaborate," Thane commanded, though he didn't sound particularly concerned. "The reactor output is consistent with our expectations, but there are secondary power sources throughout the ship. They're generating very low energy signatures, almost as if they're deliberately trying to minimize their electromagnetic footprint. It's probably just backup power systems, but the configuration is unusual." Thane considered this information. Many species developed redundant power systems as they advanced. though most did so in ways that were more efficient than what the sensor suggested. Perhaps humans were simply inefficient engineers. Continue monitoring, he decided. Prepare a standard first contact package. We'll offer them escort to the nearest coalition station for proper technological assessment and integration procedures. The communication systems aboard the Starfall reached out across space, broadcasting on frequencies that every spacefaring species used for diplomatic contact. The response came almost immediately, faster than should have been possible given the distance and the primitive nature of human technology. Coalition vessel, this is Captain Reed of the United Earth ship Defiance. We appreciate your attention, but we must respectfully decline any offers of assistance. We have other business to attend to in this sector. Thane's forearms moved in the gesture that indicated surprise among his people. The human's response was polite but firm, and more concerning, it showed no sign of the awe or fear that primitive species usually displayed when contacted by coalition ships. The human captain spoke as if he were addressing an equal. "Captain Reed," Thane replied, activating the translation protocols that would convert his words into the crude human language. "I am Admiral Thane of the Proximan Fleet. Standard coalition protocols require that we escort unregistered vessels to the nearest station for safety verification and diplomatic processing. This is for your own protection." There was a pause before Reed responded, and during that silence, Kira noticed something that made her secondary heart skip a beat. The human ship's power signatures had shifted slightly. Systems that had been running at minimal levels were now operating at higher capacity, though still well within the range of what primitive technology should be capable of producing. "Admiral, I appreciate the offer." Reed's voice came back across the void, carrying an undertone that Thane couldn't quite identify. "But as I said, we have other commitments. The Defiance is operating under special orders from Earth Command. I'm sure you understand the importance of following orders." The way the human said special orders made Thane's crest bristle with unease. There was something in the captain's tone that suggested knowledge the human shouldn't possess. Knowledge about coalition procedures, perhaps, or about the true nature of their escort offer. Kira's sensor readings were becoming more puzzling by the moment. The human ship was definitely doing something, but the energy signatures were so subtle that she couldn't determine exactly what. It was as if the vessel was deliberately masking its true capabilities, showing only what it wanted their scanners to detect. "Dr. Kira," Thane said quietly, "initiate deep sensor sweeps. I want to know everything about that ship. Admiral, that would violate diplomatic protocols for first contact situations," Kira reminded him. Thane studied the human vessel on the main display. Something about its angular, aggressive design bothered him. It looked too purposeful, too refined for a species that had only been in space for a century. Most primitive ships showed signs of trial and error in their construction, evidence of species learning through mistakes. The Defiance looked like it had been designed by engineers who knew exactly what they were doing. "Begin the deep scans," he ordered. "If these humans are truly primitive, they won't even know we're doing it." As the Starfall's most advanced sensors reached out toward the human warship, neither Thane nor Kira realized they were about to discover something that would fundamentally change their understanding of humanity's place in the galaxy. The Defiance continued on its course, seemingly oblivious to the intense scrutiny it was receiving, but Captain Reed's final transmission carried a note that would haunt Thane's dreams for years to come. "Safe travels, Admiral. May your journey be enlightening." The first sign that something was terribly wrong came from the deepest sensor arrays aboard the Starfall. Dr. Kira had been expecting to find the usual collection of primitive systems that marked a young spacefaring civilization. Instead, her instruments were painting a picture that made no sense according to everything the Coalition knew about technological development. "Admiral," Kira called out, her voice tight with confusion. "The deep scans are showing some very unusual readings." Thane moved to stand behind her station, His primary arms folded while his secondary arms worked the controls to bring up additional displays. What he saw there challenged his understanding of how technology evolved. The human ship's hull wasn't just armored plating as their initial scans had suggested. The deeper sensors revealed a complex network of organic conduits running throughout the vessel's superstructure. These conduits pulsed with a rhythm that reminded Kira of a heartbeat, moving nutrients and information through what appeared to be a living system. "Is their ship biological?" Thane asked, though he knew the answer. Couldn't be that simple. Biological ships were among the most advanced technologies in the galaxy, requiring centuries of genetic engineering and biomechanical research to perfect. The Coalition's own bioships were considered the pinnacle of their technological achievement. "Not exactly biological, sir," Kira replied, her fingers dancing across her console as she tried to make sense of the data. "It appears to be a hybrid system. The base structure is traditional metal and ceramic, but there are organic components integrated throughout. They're not just decorative or supplementary. They're fundamental to the ship's operation. The organic systems weren't crude attempts at biological integration, as might be expected from a primitive species experimenting with advanced concepts. Instead, they showed a level of sophistication that surpassed even Coalition biotechnology. The organic components were actively adapting to changing conditions, optimizing the ship's performance in real time. "Look at this," Kira whispered, highlighting a section of the scan results. "The organic systems are manufacturing new components while we watch. They're literally growing replacement parts and system upgrades based on environmental conditions." Thane felt his secondary hearts skip as he processed the implications. The Coalition's most advanced bioships required specialized facilities for maintenance and upgrades. The idea that a ship could heal and improve itself while in deep space was something their best scientists had only theorized about. But the biological components weren't the most disturbing discovery. As the sensors penetrated deeper into the Defiance's core systems, they detected something that shouldn't have been possible with any known technology. The humans weren't just using nanotechnology to maintain their ship. They were manipulating matter at the quantum level, creating and destroying atomic bonds with precision that bordered on the supernatural. "Admiral, I'm detecting what appears to be controlled quantum manipulation in their engineering sections," Kira reported, her voice barely above a whisper. "They're not just rearranging existing materials, they're creating new ones by altering the fundamental structure of atoms." The implications hit Thane like a physical blow. Quantum-level manufacturing was purely theoretical, even for the Coalition. Their best scientists had concluded that the energy requirements and precision needed made it impossible outside of laboratory conditions. Yet here was a human ship, supposedly primitive, performing these operations as part of its normal function. "Are you certain of these readings?" Thane demanded. Kira ran the scans again, triple-checking her instruments. The results remained the same. "The energy signatures are unmistakable, Admiral. They're converting base materials into exotic compounds that don't appear in any of our databases. Some of these materials shouldn't be stable under normal conditions, yet they're not only stable but actively contributing to the ship's performance." The human vessel continued on its course, apparently unaware that its deepest secrets were being revealed. Or perhaps, Thane thought with growing unease, Captain Reed was entirely aware and simply didn't care. The casual way the human had dismissed Coalition authority was starting to make more sense. "Sir, there's something else," Kira continued, her voice trembling slightly. "The quantum manufacturing isn't random. It's directed by some kind of artificial intelligence that's analyzing our sensor sweeps and adjusting the ship's configuration in response. The ship is learning about our technology by studying how we study it." Thane moved to the main display, staring at the angular human warship. From the outside, it still looked like a crude, primitive vessel, but now he knew that appearance was deliberately deceptive. The Defiance was more advanced than any ship in the Coalition fleet, possibly more advanced than anything the Coalition could build, even if they combined all their resources. How long have humans possessed this technology? He asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. Kira consulted her databases, cross-referencing the scan results with known human technological development. According to our records, humans achieved faster-than-light travel 97 standard years ago. Their first contact with coalition trade representatives occurred 82 years ago. At that time, they were assessed as having primitive nuclear technology and basic spaceflight capabilities. And now, based on what we're seeing, their technology has advanced beyond our own in several key areas. The rate of development is unprecedented in galactic history. Most species require millennia to achieve this level of sophistication. Thane considered ordering an immediate withdrawal. The Starfall was a scout ship, designed for stealth and information gathering, not combat. If the humans decided to take aggressive action, his ship would be defenseless against technology this advanced. But his duty to the Coalition required him to gather as much information as possible. Can you determine how they achieved this level of advancement so quickly? He asked. Kira worked her controls, trying to extract more information from the sensor. Data. I'm detecting data storage systems throughout the ship, but they're unlike anything in our database. The information density is incredible. They appear to be storing the equivalent of our entire galactic database in a space no larger than a standard data crystal. The more they learned about the human ship, the more questions arose. How had they developed such advanced technology? In isolation? Where had they acquired the knowledge to create quantum-level manufacturing systems? Most importantly, why had they hidden their capabilities from the Coalition? Admiral, Kira said suddenly, her voice filled with alarm. I'm detecting a change in their power systems. Multiple reactors are coming online throughout the ship. Power output is increasing exponentially. On the main display, the Defiance appeared, unchanged. Its engines maintained the same steady burn. Its hull showed no signs of activity, but the sensors told a different story. Deep within the ship, systems were awakening that made the Coalition's most powerful warships look like children's. Toys, are they preparing to attack? Thane asked, though he already knew that if the humans wanted to destroy the Starfall, they could have done so at any time during the encounter. I don't think so, sir, Kira replied, studying the power distribution patterns. It looks more like they're preparing to leave, but the energy levels they're generating would be sufficient to power a small moon. Captain Reed's voice crackled across the communication channel, as calm and polite as before. Admiral Thane, I hope your scientific curiosity has been satisfied. The Defiance will be departing this area shortly. Again, I appreciate your interest in our activities. The casual tone made Thane's blood run cold. The human captain was acknowledging that he knew about the deep sensor scans, something that should have been impossible to detect with primitive technology. Reed was telling them, politely but firmly, that their investigation was over. Captain Reed, Thane replied, trying to keep his voice steady. Perhaps we could arrange a more formal meeting. The Coalition would be very interested in establishing closer diplomatic relations with humanity. There was a pause. And when Reed responded, Thane could hear something that might have been amusement in the human's voice. I'm sure they would be, Admiral. But as I mentioned, we have other business to attend to. Perhaps in the future, when circumstances are more appropriate. The Defiance's engines flared brighter, and the ship began to accelerate away from the Starfall. But the acceleration was wrong. The ship was moving faster than its engines should have been able to propel it, defying basic physics as the Coalition understood them. Kira's sensors tracked the human vessel as it moved away, recording impossible readings that would keep Coalition scientists busy for decades. The Defiance wasn't just advanced. It was operating on principles that the Coalition's best minds had never even conceived. As the human ship disappeared into the vast darkness of space, Thane realized that everything the Coalition believed about the galaxy, about technology, and about their own superiority had just been shattered by a supposedly primitive species that had been hiding in plain sight for nearly a century. The age of coalition dominance, built on the foundation of technological superiority, had just ended. They simply didn't know it yet. The emergency session aboard the Starfall had been running for 6 hours. Admiral Thane paced the length of his private quarters while Dr. Kira presented her analysis of the sensor data they had gathered from the human vessel. What she was telling him violated everything he thought he knew about the nature of warfare in space. "Show me the weapons analysis again," Thane commanded, settling into his chair with the weariness of someone whose worldview had been thoroughly demolished. Kira activated the holographic display, bringing up a three-dimensional representation of the Defiance's internal structure. Red markers indicated weapon systems throughout the ship, but these weren't the crude magnetic accelerators their initial scans had detected. "The surface-mounted weapons are decoys," Kira explained, her voice carrying the strain of hours spent trying to understand impossible technology. "They're functional, but they're designed to make the ship appear primitive to casual observation. The real weapons are integrated into the ship's superstructure." The hologram rotated, revealing weapon systems that seemed to exist in impossible spaces. Gravitational manipulation devices that occupied the same physical location as the ships. Structural supports. Energy weapons that drew power from sources that shouldn't exist. Most disturbing of all, temporal displacement systems that could theoretically age enemy vessels to dust in seconds. "Explain the gravitational weapons," Thane ordered, though he dreaded the answer. "They appear to be capable of creating localized gravitational fields with incredible precision," Kira replied, highlighting the relevant systems on the display. "Not just artificial gravity for crew comfort, but weaponized gravity that can create miniature black holes or gravitational shears that could tear apart enemy ships at the molecular level." Thane had commanded warships for over 2 centuries. He had participated in battles against rogue species and pirate fleets, armed with the most advanced weapons the galaxy had to offer. He had never encountered anything remotely like what Kira was describing. "The energy requirements alone should make such weapons impossible," he protested. "Creating even a microscopic black hole would require more power than our largest battle stations can generate." "That's what our physics tells us," Kira agreed. "But the humans appear to be drawing energy from sources we don't understand. Look at this." The hologram shifted to show the Defiance's power distribution network. Instead of the centralized reactor, systems used by all known spacefaring species, the human ship had hundreds of small power sources scattered throughout its structure. Each one generated more energy than should have been possible for its size. "Zero-point energy extraction," Kira whispered. "They're harvesting energy directly from the quantum vacuum. It's purely theoretical technology. Our best scientists said it was impossible. But the impossibilities didn't end there. As Kira continued her analysis, she revealed weapons systems that seemed to operate outside the normal laws of physics. Reality anchors that could prevent faster-than-light travel in a radius of several light years. Probability manipulators that could make enemy weapons malfunction by altering the quantum probability of their components functioning properly. Time dilation fields that could slow enemy projectiles to a crawl while allowing the human ship to operate at normal speeds. "How do you fight something like this?" Thane asked, though he already knew the answer. "You don't," Kira replied simply. "Admiral, this single human ship could destroy our entire fleet without taking significant damage, and that's assuming they don't have weapons we haven't detected yet. The worst part was that the weapons weren't just advanced beyond coalition understanding. They were adaptive. The biomechanical systems that ran throughout the Defiance were constantly modifying and improving the ship's armaments based on perceived threats. The ship was literally evolving its weapon systems in real time. "Run the engagement simulation," again, Thane ordered, though he had already seen the results dozens of times. The holographic display shifted to show a tactical analysis of a hypothetical battle between the Starfall and the Defiance. The simulation lasted exactly 4.7 seconds. The human ship's gravitational weapons would tear through the Starfall's shields and hull like tissue paper. Even if the Coalition vessel managed to fire its weapons, the probability manipulators would ensure that none of them functioned properly. What about multiple ships? Thane asked desperately. A full battle fleet? Kira ran the simulation again, this time pitting a Coalition battle group against the single human vessel. The results were marginally better. The engagement lasted 7.2 seconds before the last Coalition ship was destroyed. The reality anchors prevented any Coalition vessel from escaping via faster-than-light travel. "Admiral," Kira said quietly, "I don't think they're using their full capabilities. The weapon systems we detected appear to be operating at minimal power levels. If they wanted to destroy us, they could have done it instantly." This realization was perhaps the most terrifying of all. Captain Reed had allowed them to scan his ship, had let them discover its true nature, secure in the knowledge that there was nothing the Coalition could do about it. The human had been playing with them, like an adult humoring a child's games. "Analyze their defensive systems," Thane commanded, hoping against hope that they might find some weakness they could exploit. The results were no more encouraging. The Defiance's hull wasn't just armored. It was actively defended by force fields that operated on principles the Coalition had never encountered. Energy weapons would be absorbed and redirected. Kinetic weapons would be slowed to a stop by gravitational fields. Even theoretical weapons like antimatter charges would be neutralized by localized spatial distortions that prevented matter and antimatter from coming into contact. "The ship is essentially invulnerable to any weapon in our arsenal," Kira concluded. "But Admiral, there's something else, something worse." Thane wasn't sure he could handle any more revelations, but his duty required him to listen. "The manufacturing systems we detected earlier aren't just creating replacement parts," Kira continued. "They're creating new weapons. While we've been analyzing the ship, it's been growing additional armaments. The weapon count has increased by 30% since we began our scans." The implications were staggering. The human ship could not only repair itself in the middle of a battle, but could actually become more dangerous as the fight progressed. It was a weapon that grew stronger through conflict, adapting to overcome any defense an enemy might deploy. "Send a coded transmission to Coalition Command," Thane ordered. "Priority Alpha. Tell them we've encountered a potential threat that requires immediate attention." "What should I tell them about the nature of the threat?" Kira asked. Thane considered the question. "How do you tell the most powerful military force in the galaxy that a single ship from a supposedly primitive species could defeat their entire fleet? How do you explain that humanity had developed weapons that made Coalition technology look like stone axes? Tell them that our assessment of human technological capabilities was incorrect," he said finally. "Severely incorrect. Recommend immediate diplomatic contact and suggest that any military action would be inadvisable." As Kira began composing the message, Thane stared at the sensor readings one more time. Somewhere out there, Captain Reed was continuing on his mission, whatever that might be. The human had been polite, even friendly, during their brief conversation, but the weapons his ship carried could sterilize entire star systems. The most disturbing thought of all was that the Defiance was just one ship. If humanity had developed this level of technology, how many more vessels like it were there? How long had they been watching the Coalition, studying their weaknesses, preparing for something that Thane was only beginning to understand? "Admiral," Kira said suddenly, "I'm detecting another energy surge from the direction the human ship went. Much larger than anything we recorded before." "Are they coming back?" Thane asked, though he wasn't sure if he hoped the answer was yes or no. "I don't think so, sir. The energy signature suggests they're opening some kind of spatial rift. They're not just using faster-than-light travel, they're creating a shortcut through space itself." The sensors showed a brief flash of impossible energies, and then nothing. The Defiance had disappeared, leaving behind only the memory of weapons that could reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. As Thane prepared his report for Coalition Command, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had just witnessed the end of an era. The Coalition's 1,000-year reign as the dominant force in the galaxy was over. They just didn't know it yet. But Captain Reed and the crew of the Defiance certainly did, and Thane suspected they were already moving to ensure that this new reality would be implemented whether the Coalition accepted it or not. The age of human dominance was beginning, and it would be built on weapons that the Coalition couldn't understand, couldn't counter, and couldn't hope to match. 3 days after their encounter with the Defiance, Dr. Kira made a discovery that would haunt the Coalition for generations to come. She had been attempting to analyze the residual energy signatures left behind by the human ship when her instruments detected something that made her secondary heart stop beating. The quantum communication array aboard the Starfall, designed to detect the faintest traces of faster-than-light transmissions, had picked up something impossible. Data streams were flowing through space in patterns that defied everything the Coalition knew about information theory. The signals weren't traveling faster than light. They were arriving instantaneously across impossible distances. "Admiral Thane," Kira called out, her voice barely steady enough to form words. "You need to see this immediately." Thane arrived at her station to find displays showing communication networks that spanned half the galaxy. Lines of connection stretched between star systems, creating a web of information that covered regions of space the Coalition had never fully explored. At the center of each node was a human ship. "What am I looking at?" Thane demanded, though. Part of him already suspected the answer would shatter what remained of his confidence. "It's a communication network," Kira replied, her fingers trembling as she worked her controls. "Quantum entanglement-based, operating on principles we've never seen before. Admiral, there are thousands of human ships out there, all connected through instantaneous communication links." The scope of what they were seeing was beyond anything the Coalition had imagined possible. While they had believed humanity to be a young, primitive species confined to a small region of space near their home star, the truth was that human vessels had spread throughout the galaxy. They were everywhere, hidden in asteroid fields, orbiting, remote planets, stationed at the edge of Coalition space. "How long have they been there?" Thane asked, though he dreaded the answer. Kira consulted her analysis algorithms, cross-referencing the data with known Coalition activities. "Based on the network topology and signal degradation patterns, I estimate the network has been operational for at least 50 standard years. Possibly longer. 50 years. For half a century, humanity had been watching, studying, preparing. While the Coalition had dismissed them as barely spacefaring primitives, human ships had been silently documenting every aspect of Coalition society, technology, and military capabilities. "Can you intercept their communications?" Thane asked. "I'm trying, but their encryption is unlike anything we've encountered. The data is encoded using quantum principles that make it theoretically impossible to decode without the proper keys. However, I am detecting massive data transfers between nodes. They're sharing information on a scale that suggests..." Kira paused, her face pale as she processed the implications of what she was seeing. "Suggests what?" Thane prompted. "They know everything, Admiral. Every Coalition military installation, every trade route, every technological specification, every political alliance. The data volume suggests they have complete intelligence on our entire civilization." The revelation hit Thane like a physical blow. The Coalition's security protocols, their classified military technologies, their most sensitive diplomatic negotiations, all of it had been observed and documented by a species they had considered too primitive to pose any threat. "Show me the network topology," Thane ordered. The holographic display revealed the true scope of humanity's presence in the galaxy. Thousands of ships strategically positioned to observe and, if necessary, strike at every major Coalition stronghold. The network wasn't just for communication and surveillance. It was a military deployment that had been decades in the making. "Admiral," Kira whispered, "look at this positioning pattern. Every major coalition world has human ships within striking distance. Every military base, every industrial center, every population hub. They could launch simultaneous attacks across our entire territory. But the most disturbing aspect of the network wasn't its military potential. It was the fact that it had been built under the coalition's noses without anyone detecting it. Human technology was so far advanced that they had been able to operate throughout coalition space for decades while remaining completely invisible. "Try to establish communication with one of the nodes," Thane commanded. "Maybe we can learn more about their intentions." Kira worked her controls, attempting to send a standard diplomatic message to the nearest human vessel. The response came immediately, not from the ship she had contacted, but from the Defiance, still thousands of light years away. "Admiral Thane," Captain Reed's voice filled the bridge, as calm and friendly as it had been during their first encounter. "I see you've discovered our communication network. I hope you found it educational." The casual way Reed acknowledged their discovery confirmed Thane's worst fears. The humans weren't just watching the coalition. They were watching the coalition. Watch them. Every move, every analysis, every strategic decision was being observed and recorded. "Captain Reed," Thane replied, trying to keep his voice steady, "I think it's time we had a more honest conversation about humanity's intentions in this sector." "I appreciate your directness, Admiral," Reed responded. "Very well. Would you like to know what we've learned during our 50 years of observation?" Before Thane could respond, his displays filled with information that made his worst nightmares seem optimistic. Human intelligence files on coalition operations revealed a pattern of oppression and exploitation that stretched back centuries. Young species forced into technological dependence, resource-rich worlds stripped bare to fuel coalition expansion, entire civilizations held in check by the threat of superior technology. "We discovered quite early that the coalition's version of galactic peace was built on the systematic suppression of younger species," Reed continued, his voice carrying a tone of disappointment that was somehow more terrifying than anger would have been. "Your technological superiority was used not to uplift and educate, but to control and exploit." The files showed incident after incident of coalition forces crushing any species that showed signs of technological advancement. Promising civilizations had been set back centuries to prevent them from challenging coalition dominance. It was a pattern of behavior that humanity had documented with meticulous precision. "So we decided to do something about it," Reed said simply. "What do you mean?" Thane asked, though he was beginning to understand the true scope of humanity's plan. "We spent 50 years developing countermeasures to every coalition weapon, shield, and defensive system. We studied your tactics, your strategies, your weaknesses. We prepared for the day when we would have the capability to level the playing field. The network wasn't just for surveillance and communication. It was a delivery system for the most advanced military technology in galactic history. Every human ship was equipped with weapons that could neutralize coalition forces instantly. More importantly, they were prepared to share that technology with every species the coalition had oppressed." "You're planning a rebellion," Thane realized. "We're planning liberation," Reed corrected. "Every species deserves the right to develop according to its own potential, free from the threat of technological suppression. The Coalition's reign of enforced stagnation is coming to an end. The implications were staggering. Hundreds of species throughout Coalition space, suddenly armed with weapons that could match or exceed Coalition technology. The balance of power that had maintained galactic stability for 1,000 years would be shattered overnight." "The galaxy will descend into chaos," Thane protested. "Without Coalition oversight, these primitive species will destroy themselves and each other." "Perhaps," Reed admitted. "But that will be their choice to make. Freedom includes the freedom to make mistakes and learn from them. The Coalition robbed them of that opportunity. As if to demonstrate the reach of their network, human ships began decloak throughout Coalition space. Not attacking, not threatening, simply revealing themselves. Thousands of vessels that had been invisible for decades suddenly appeared on Coalition sensors, their presence a clear message that the age of human secrecy was over. "We're not your enemies, Admiral," Reed continued. "We're simply no longer willing to pretend that coalition dominance is natural or inevitable. The galaxy is changing, and those who adapt will survive and prosper. Those who don't." The transmission ended, leaving Thane and his crew alone with the knowledge that everything they had believed about their place in the galaxy was wrong. The coalition wasn't the supreme military power they had imagined. They were simply one species, among many, and their technological advantages had just evaporated. The network humanity had built wasn't just a military asset. It was a new form of galactic civilization, one based on cooperation and mutual advancement rather than dominance and control. Every species connected to the network would have access to technologies that could transform their societies overnight. "Admiral," Kira said quietly, "I'm detecting massive energy buildups throughout Coalition space. Every human ship is powering up simultaneously." Thane watched the tactical displays as thousands of human vessels revealed their true capabilities. The energy signatures were beyond anything the Coalition could match, even if they combined their entire fleet. But the humans weren't taking aggressive positions. They were simply making their presence known, sending a message that could be understood in any language. The age of Coalition supremacy was over. The question now was whether the transition to this new galactic order would be peaceful or violent. That choice, Thane realized, was entirely up to the Coalition leadership. As reports flooded in from across Coalition space of human ships appearing near every major installation, Thane began to understand that he had witnessed more than just a technological revelation. He had seen the birth of a new era, one in which humanity would serve as the guardians of galactic freedom rather than its oppressors. The network that Captain Reed had built wasn't just a weapon. It was hope for every species that had been held, backed by Coalition policies. And for the first time in centuries, the galaxy's future was truly uncertain, filled with possibilities that the Coalition had never allowed to exist. Whether that future would be bright or dark depended entirely on how quickly the old order could adapt to the new reality that humanity had created. The emergency session at Coalition High Command had been running for 18 hours straight. Representatives from dozens of species filled the great assembly hall, their voices raised in arguments that echoed off the crystal walls. Admiral Thane stood at the center podium, his report having triggered the greatest crisis in Coalition history. "You're telling us that a single primitive species has somehow developed technology that makes our entire military obsolete?" demanded General Voss, the Coalition's supreme military commander. His scaled features showed the disbelief that many in the assembly shared. "I'm telling you that our assessment of humanity was fundamentally flawed," Thane replied, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had seen the impossible become reality. "They are not primitive. They may be the most advanced species in the galaxy." The holographic displays around the assembly hall showed real-time tactical data from across Coalition space. Red markers indicated human vessels that had revealed themselves in the past 72 hours. There were thousands of them, positioned with military precision near every significant Coalition installation. If they wanted to destroy us, they could have done it at any time over the past 50 years, Thane continued. "The fact that we're still alive means they have other intentions." Those intentions became clear as reports flooded in from Coalition worlds throughout the galaxy. Human ships weren't attacking. Instead, they were broadcasting messages on all frequencies, speaking in the native languages of dozens of species. The message was simple and revolutionary. The age of Coalition dominance was over, but humanity wasn't seeking to replace the Coalition as galactic overlords. They were offering something far more dangerous to the established order: freedom. Species that had been held in technological stagnation for centuries were suddenly being offered access to advanced defensive systems that would make Coalition military threats meaningless. "Sir," Commander Lane interrupted, rushing into the assembly hall with the latest intelligence reports, "we're receiving confirmation from monitoring stations throughout the Outer Rim. Human vessels are making direct contact with subject species. and providing them with advanced technology packages. The implications were staggering. The Zephyrians, held at early industrial levels for 3 centuries, were suddenly building faster-than-light drives. The Aquarians, restricted to their water. Worlds by coalition environmental regulations were constructing ships capable of interstellar travel. Dozens of species were leaping forward centuries in technological development within a matter of days. "They're arming our enemies," General Voss growled, his military mind immediately grasping the tactical implications. "They're freeing their allies," Thane corrected. "And from what I've seen of human capabilities, anyone who opposes them will become their enemy very quickly." The debate raged for hours as coalition leadership struggled to understand how their 1,000-year reign could be ending so abruptly. Some called for immediate military action, despite the obvious futility of attacking ships armed with weapons that violated known physics. Others demanded diplomatic contact, hoping to negotiate some kind of accommodation with the humans. The decision was made for them when Captain Reed's image appeared on the main display, addressing the entire coalition. Assembly without permission or invitation. The ease with which he had penetrated their most secure communications network demonstrated the hopelessness of their position. "Honored representatives of the coalition," Reed began, his tone respectful but firm. "I address you today not as conquerors, but as advocates for galactic freedom. For too long, the coalition has maintained order through the systematic suppression of technological advancement among younger species." The assembly erupted in protests and denials, but Reed continued speaking, his words carrying over the chaos. "With the authority of someone who held all the cards, we have documented evidence of coalition interference in the natural development of over 200 species. Promising civilizations have been prevented from reaching their potential through trade restrictions, technology embargoes, and in some cases, direct military intervention." Historical files began appearing on the displays throughout the assembly hall, showing incident after incident of coalition forces crushing technological advancement among subject species. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. "We do not seek to punish the coalition for past actions," Reed continued. "We seek to ensure that such actions become impossible in the future. Every species in the galaxy deserves the right to develop, according to its own potential, free from artificial constraints." General Voss stood up, his voice shaking with rage. "You cannot simply destroy the order that has maintained galactic peace for a millennium. Without coalition oversight, these primitive species will destroy themselves and each other." Reed's expression didn't change, but his next words carried the weight of absolute certainty. "General, your galactic peace was built on the suffering of billions of beings whose only crime was being born into species you deemed inferior. That peace was never worth the price it demanded." The displays shifted to show real-time footage from coalition worlds where human technology was being distributed to previously suppressed species. Advanced medical systems were healing genetic damage caused by centuries of industrial pollution. Educational networks were sharing scientific knowledge that had been restricted for generations. Most significantly, defensive systems were being installed that would make it impossible for any single species to dominate others through military force. "The galaxy you have known is ending," Reed announced. "In its place, we offer something that has never existed before. True equality among species. No one will hold technological superiority over others. No one will be able to impose their will through force." "Chaos," whispered Chancellor Hayes, the coalition's political leader. "You're describing chaos." "We're describing freedom," Reed replied. "Yes, there will be conflicts. Yes, some species will make mistakes and pay the price for them. But they will be free to make those mistakes and learn from them. The coalition robbed them of that fundamental right." As Reed spoke, more reports arrived of human ships appearing throughout coalition space. But these weren't just military vessels. They were cargo ships, hospital ships, construction vessels, and mobile universities. Humanity wasn't just offering military protection to freed species. They were providing the infrastructure needed to Support rapid technological advancement. You have a choice, Reed told the assembly. You can attempt to maintain the old order through force, knowing that you lack the military capability to succeed. Or you can adapt to the new reality and take your place as equals among the species of the galaxy. The choice was stark and undeniable. Coalition military forces were obsolete. Their technological advantages had evaporated overnight. Their political authority was crumbling as subject species gained the means to defend themselves. What guarantee do we have that humanity won't simply become the new oppressors? Demanded Ambassador Torres, speaking for one of the coalition's founding species. You have the same guarantee we're offering everyone else, Reed replied. Mutual vulnerability. Humanity is sharing defensive technologies with every species, including those who were formerly part of the coalition. No one will have the ability to dominate others. It was a radical concept that challenged everything the coalition had believed about galactic governance. Instead of maintaining peace through superior force, humanity was proposing to maintain it through mutual defense. Every species would have the capability to protect itself, making aggression pointless. Over the following weeks, the transformation of galactic civilization accelerated beyond anyone's ability to control or predict. Species that had been held at medieval technology levels were suddenly building interstellar civilizations. Ancient conflicts were being resolved as former enemies gained access to resources and technologies that made their disputes irrelevant. The coalition didn't collapse overnight. Instead, it evolved into something unrecognizable. Former subject. Species became equal partners. Military hierarchies gave way to cooperative agreements. The 1,000-year-old system of technological control was replaced by open sharing of knowledge and resources. Thane found himself serving as humanity's liaison to the reformed coalition, helping to manage the transition to this new galactic order. It wasn't easy. There were conflicts, misunderstandings, and growing pains as species adapted to their newfound freedom. But for the first time in his long life, he was part of something that was truly just. The final irony wasn't lost on him. Humanity, the species the coalition had dismissed as too primitive to matter, had accomplished what no conqueror in galactic history had achieved. They had created a civilization based not on dominance, but on the radical idea that every species deserved the chance to reach its full potential. The galaxy would never be the same. And as Thane watched former coalition worlds transform into centers of learning and innovation, he realized that change was the best thing that had ever happened to galactic civilization. Captain Reed had been right. The universe was big enough for all of them. And now, finally, they were all free to explore it as equals.